Hello, my name is Andreas of Anavision. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to go through how to edit 3D video. Now you may have a 3D camera, you take 3D video, or you may have some 3D content lying around, but what next? You want to edit that content, you want to process it, but how do you do that? And that's a good question. That question has been asked on my channel, and I've asked it of myself. It's not that straightforward, you see. There's a lot of focus at the moment on 360 VR and 180 VR, stereoscopic, but not on just standard stereoscopic side-by-side video. There's also lots out there for stereoscopic photography, for imaging, but again, not for video. So having struggled with this myself, I came up with a method that actually works fairly simply. And I want to take you through that. So let's do that together and join me as I show you how this method works. So this method of 3D editing that I'm going to be showing you is going to be based on Premiere Pro. But having said that, it is a generic method. So it should, in theory, also be possible to do this on other leading video editors, such as Vegas. The other thing that's worth noting is that there used to be a plugin for Premiere Pro that did something like this. It was called Vision 3, and it existed, I think, about 10 years ago. It doesn't exist anymore, so the method that I'm going to show you is basically doing manually what you could do automatically using this plugin. Now it is manual, but it's fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward. It's not that onerous. As you'll see, just trust me, it's not that hard. It's actually quite amazing how easy it is to set this up. So let's have a look. And I'm going to show you how to process this using Adobe Premiere Pro. And as we look at that, I'm just going to show you how to do some rudimentary tasks. There are many more tasks that you can do, but the principles of what I'm going to be showing you can be applied to those other tasks as well. So the sort of tasks that I'm going to be showing you are how to align your left and your right eye. Now, if you take your video with a 3D camera, like the Fujifilm 3D-W3, then you may not need to do this because the lenses are already aligned. But if you take your video independently with two different cameras, then it's likely that you're going to have to align the images because they're going to naturally be misaligned. You may need to rotate them or change the position of the video to match. I'm going to show you how you do that. I'm also going to show you how to do parallax adjustments. Parallax is basically where your video resides in the depth plane. You can move it in front of the screen or at the back of the screen or level with the screen, depending on where you want your objects to be. The next thing I'm going to show you is just some general editing. For that, I've chosen to show you how to do warp stabilizing and also to smooth the frame rate. And I've particularly done these because I am using as my source a Fujifilm 3D-W3 video, and I found that those are typical sort of tasks that you would do on those. Now, you may want to do all sorts of other things in your video, like change the color, change the positioning, zoom in, zoom out, whatever else you want to do, you can still do those. The principle for those will be quite similar. The other thing that's worth pointing out is that this process can be applied to other leading video editing apps as well. You don't have to do this in Adobe Premiere Pro. You can, for example, do this in Vegas as well. I deliberately chose to show you a generic method so that you can apply this to any of the leading video apps that are out there. Now, before we can start any processing in either Adobe Premiere Pro or Vegas, we need to get the files into a format that we can import into those applications. And we're going to need to get them into independent files, one for the left eye and one for the right eye. Now I'm going to assume as a starting point that we're using the SBS, the side-by-side format. And we're going to split those files into a left video and a right video that we can then import. I'm going to be using ffmpeg to achieve this. On the output side, when we render the video, a very similar thing. We're going to have to export the videos as independent left and right eye videos, and I'm then going to be showing you how to join them back together to create a side-by-side, a SBS format. Again, using ffmpeg. Now, it's worth pointing out here that you do not have to start with an SBS format. I'm just assuming this because it's one of the most common formats that's out there. But there are others, and I've listed some of the others here. For example, instead of side-by-side, which is what the SBS format is, there's also top-bottom. There's also interlaced formats. The Fujifilm 3D-W3 camera produces a special AVI file that is also not side-by-side. You may be starting with an anaglyph video, or a Blu-ray video, or even a stereoscopic 360 VR video that you want to translate into just a standard side-by-side video. So there's many different formats that are out there. And this applies to both our video source as well as our destination file format. They could all be different depending on what we have and what we want to generate. We will not be covering how to process these formats in this video. Suffice to say that it is possible to use and generate split individual left and right videos from these. But if I were to cover all of these in this video would just become too bloated. And the intent here is not to show how to translate file formats, but how to edit. So I may cover these in individual videos later. It is of course possible, and maybe easier even, to change the format to an SBS and then just use the process for now that I'm going to be showing you here. Before we get started, let's just have a quick look at the video that we're going to be processing. I'll open it up here. I've called it SBS, which is our side-by-side video. You can see here me crossing a footbridge in the Himalayas across this river valley. Now, the reason I want to show you this is so that you can see for yourself how shaken up this video is. To see it better, let me just put it into anaglyph mode so that at least you can see it in full size, not just the two halves. The shake that you see is more due to my walking than it is due to the bridge shaking. Although the bridge was shaking a little. But you will still get this shake even if you just hold the camera and if you walk on steady ground. So it is a common use case that we are looking at here. Okay, now that we've had a look at the video, let's get it ready for import into Premiere Pro. Before we can do that, we need to split the video, the side-by-side file, into each individual left and right videos. And I've given you a script to do that. It's right here in the comments section of this YouTube video. Ensure that you use the script under the import section, not the export section. And before I use this, let me just describe what it does. It can essentially be split into three parts. And this first part here just tells ffmpeg to process any MP4 video file it finds in the directory in which you execute this command. Now, the other thing worth noting is that you do need ffmpeg installed on your PC. And whilst we're here, I might as well show you that I've also got a link in my description to show you where you can obtain that. And it's free, by the way, so that's right here. It also comes with documentation, so you can look at ffmpeg commands to refine this command should you wish to do that further. So back to the command then. The second part here is to create the left eye video, and the third part here creates the right eye video. So starting with the left eye, let's discuss the command and dive in a little bit further. The first part here crops the video so that only the left side remains. The second part here stretches the video to make it full size. You will need to specify the aspect ratio here for the left side of the video, and since we're dealing with a half-width side-by-side video to begin with, we want to stretch it to twice its width, which happens to be the same as the SBS complete video file because it contains 2 videos. So that makes it easy. All you have to do is look up the aspect ratio of the video to start off with and type it in here. Just a note, for full width side-by-side videos, you can just leave this part out altogether since the video does not need any stretching. Now, for the right side, it's similar, so I won't describe that again. Make sure, though, that you use the same aspect ratio here. And also, you do not, again, need to use the aspect ratio at all if this is a full width side-by-side video that you're processing. Okay, now let's take this command by copying it and going to our directory and opening a command prompt by typing in cmd in the command bar here and then pasting this command right in. Now, before I execute, let's just check that the aspect ratio that I'm using here is the correct one by opening the properties of the SBS file. And here we see that the frame width is 1280 and the height is 720, which by doing a quick calc, let's just do that. 1280 divided by 720 is indeed 1.7777 and so forth. So we're ready to go. And whilst this is processing here, you see that it is creating 2 new files, one with a _L suffix and the other with a _R suffix. And that's just to distinguish between the left and the right eye videos. And the script does that automatically for you. Okay, now that this is complete, let's have a quick look just to see that it has done the right thing. And here we see, opening up the left eye, that it's playing okay. And let's open up the right eye as well, and that one's playing as well. Good. Okay, so now let's open up Premiere Pro and import those 2 videos in. So I'm going to drag the left eye across right into our timeline, and also the right one. And that now sets us up ready to start setting up Premiere Pro for editing this video. Okay, so now that we have the 2 streams in Premiere Pro, let's set this up so that we can edit this with confidence, so that we know how we're going to impact our 3D characteristics of our video when we make our edits. And to do this, I will temporarily recolor the streams so that you can use anaglyph glasses to view this. Now, talking about these glasses, this is what they look like. I'm sure you've seen them before. I suggest that you get one of these if you don't already have a pair, so that you can easily check your work. You can pick these up pretty much, from anywhere for about $1, and it's a good investment. But even if you don't have one of these, you can still edit the video as long as what you're doing is common to both eyes. And that'll become more evident as we move along. So don't worry about that just yet. So don't give up just because you don't have one of these, okay? You can do a lot with editing even without these, but they will definitely help. Also, anaglyph glasses may not be your preferred way of viewing 3D content. But remember, this is only temporarily. We're setting this up so that you can edit this content within Premiere Pro. But then later, once we've rendered it out of Premiere Pro, it's an SBS video, and you can watch this and view this using any 3D method that you have at your disposal. So don't worry about the 3D anaglyph that we're using now. It's only temporary. Okay, so to do this, let's show you what you need to do here in Premiere Pro. We're going to use an effect called, and it starts with RGB, so I don't actually remember the name in full right now, RGB for red, green, blue, and it's this red, green, blue color balance that you have here. And you'll notice that it's here in the obsolete section. And you may be concerned that we're using something here that's obsolete. That's not going to be an issue, all right? So remember again that we are doing this temporarily. We're going to remove this before we render it out. This is only as a guide to help us know what the impact of our 3D work is while we're editing in here. By the way, the reason that it is obsolete, from what I understand, is that the color depth is not the same color depth that is now used in Premiere Pro. It may be 8-bit, you know, the previous sort of bit depth that was used, but is now deprecated. Okay, so we add it to our left stream. I'm going to also add it to our right stream, and you'll see that the color balance has appeared here in our effects. And I'm going to now change the right side to be cyan. Now I'm going to take all the red out of it, and I'm going to give it 100% green. Oh, it's done that by default, which is great, and 100% blue. So this is now cyan. I'm just going to toggle that off so that we see the video underneath this one, which is the left one. And for the left one, we want to make that red. So I'm going to make that 100% red and take off the green altogether and take out the blue altogether. And that makes it red, right? So if we now switch back on our top layer, this is cyan and this is red. So we've got our two streams in the right colors. But we haven't combined them yet, so we still need to do that. So I'm going to combine them using the color blend mode, and I'm going to change that to linear dodge add. And now you've got the video as a anaglyph video. So if you were now to take your anaglyph glasses and put them on, you can see this in 3D. And if you happen to have anaglyph glasses, you will actually be able to see this in 3D right there in front of your screen as well. Just the way I did. Okay, there's one more thing we're going to do in preparation. So we're still not editing the video, we're just still getting things ready. I'm going to combine this stream and that stream and make that a nested sequence. I'm just going to give it the default name. And as you can see, that now makes it one continuous stream, as if that was one video. You can still click inside it, just double click on that, and you still see that your two video streams are sitting inside that. But you can treat that video just as if it was one by nesting it. And this is now going to allow us to treat the video as if it was just one video instead of two. And anything that we do to the nested sequence is going to essentially be done to both, which is exactly what we want. So this is what I was saying earlier. If you only want to do things that are common to both eyes, you can do that in this nested sequence, and you do not necessarily need to work with the red and the blue. But if you want to work with the individual files, such as what we're going to do in a moment when we need to align these, you are going to essentially need these glasses, or it's going to be very hard without them, because you're not going to see what you're doing as you're changing the 3D characteristic of this video. Okay, so like I said, the first thing we're going to do is to have a look at how we align the left eye and the right eye. So to align the left and the right videos, the first thing I'm going to do is jump back into our nested sequence here. And I'm going to select the left video, and I'm actually going to misalign it before I align it, because it happens to already be aligned. So I'm just going to set some arbitrary values in here. And the reason it was already aligned, by the way, was because I used a 3D camera, the Fujifilm camera, to film this, and the optical lenses are already aligned on that one. But your typical use case is that it's not aligned, and that's what I'm simulating here by putting some slightly off values in here. And I'm now going to show you what you need to do to get back to your original values. Now, obviously you don't know what those values are going to be, unlike us, where you've seen what the values should be. But it's going to be a good test how close we're actually going to go and get those values back using this manual process. Okay, so first step is to select two objects that are quite far apart, but have relatively to you a similar distance from you, right? So I'm going to pick this white object on this side of the bridge and this white object on the other side of the bridge, and we're going to align those relative to each other. So to do that, I'm going to, just for our sake, and I'm going to do this on the top video, so on the right video, I'm just going to change the opacity for us so that you can see easier what's happening underneath, right? I'm going to switch back to the left, and now we're going to try to align the red image back to our cyan image. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to reposition this object here, this red object, back onto this white object, because we want them to basically be on top of each other. So to do that, I'm going to just align them. Now clearly they're quite closely aligned now, but clearly this second object that we want to align is out, it's not aligned. So we're going to need to do some adjustments to get it there. Now I could obviously just shift that, but that would cause this one to be out of alignment. So we're going to have to do something else. We're going to have to change the scale and the rotation. And that's going to be somewhat of an iterative process. So I'm going to change the scale first. So I'm going to not type anything in there. I'm actually going to use the manual method of doing that. So I'm just going to scale it down to have a similar distance between those two, the two red objects to the two cyan objects. And I think that's roughly it. So now I'm going to adjust back the left-hand side to match. And I think it's still a little bit out. I think the red one is still too far to the left there. So I'm going to scale that down a little bit further, just a fraction, until I think, all right, so now I'm going to align that again. I think it's fairly well aligned now, okay? Yeah, coincidentally, it actually took us back to 100%. Not surprising, but it's fairly accurate. Okay, so on the horizontal, we're now aligned. But on the vertical, this object is aligned, but the left one here is not. So the only way that I can now align that is to use rotation. So I'm going to, again, do that by hand and try to roughly rotate that so that they have the same level. Now I need to align the left object again. And I think now that one and that one both match. So I would say our alignment is done. Now let's compare that with the values that we had before. We actually have a rotation of 0, perfect. We have a scale of 100, perfect. Trust me, I didn't do that deliberately, it actually worked. And this one here was 360, and now we have 363.3, so that's slightly out. Okay, so that's slightly out on the vertical. Just looking at it, it looks fairly good. So basically we're out by 3 pixels here, right? I'm just going to leave it for now because I also want to talk about automatic adjustments. So you can take a couple of images from your video by taking a couple of snapshots here and export them out of this application, so out of Premiere Pro, import them into a third-party application like Stereo Photo Maker. And in Stereo Photo Maker, you can align the images automatically. There is an algorithm in there that does that for you. The nice thing with Stereo Photo Maker is that it tells you what those parameters are that it used to do the alignment, and you can plug them back into here. You have to do some calculations on them before you plug them in, but they do have a one-to-one correspondence. Now that's too much for this video. I'm not going to go into that now, but I do intend to, if I get the time, do a video just to cover how you do an alignment like that. Okay, for now we're going to live with what we've got here. And one thing you'll notice is that there is one value that is quite far out from what we had before. So this is now 349, and that was 320 before. And that here is our horizontal alignment. You'll notice that we've aligned those two objects at the back. Now if I look at this with my anaglyph glasses, and you could do the same, right? You'll see this as well. You'll see that the background is level with the screen, and the bridge basically pops out in front. And that's not actually what I want. I would like to have the background further to the back and the bridge sort of starting level with the screen and extending backwards towards the background. And to do that, I need to change the parallax. So all those settings that we've adjusted so far, they are our alignment, but the one that's left, this one here, you can set to where you want your objects to be relative to the screen. So I'm again going to change that freehandedly. I'm going to make the front part line up horizontally, not the back part. So you'll see in the back things don't line up horizontally anymore, but here at the front they do. So now if I put on my anaglyph glasses, yeah, sure enough, the bridge starts from the screen and extends backwards towards the background, which is what we want. Okay, and you'll also see that it is now much closer to the value that we had before. So it's 316 and the value we had before was 320. Not that it necessarily has to be. This value can be adjusted to, like I said, where you want your objects to be. Now that takes care of all of the stereoscopic adjustments we want to make. All of the adjustments we want to make to the individual left and right video streams. Oh, and before I forget, I'm going to set this back from 70% opacity to 100% so that we've got our full anaglyph version back. Okay, next we're going to have a look at how you do some general editing. And this is the sort of thing that you would also do on a 2D video, but we need to treat that slightly different in this setup that we have here. And that's what we've got this nested sequence here for. And I'm actually going to show you how to do this warp stabilizing first. So we've seen how shaken up this video is. Just to remind you, let's just have a quick play of a short section. It's got this sharp jumping in there. We want to remove that. So to do that, we're going to search for our warp stabilizer. And there it is down here. we're simply going to drag that onto the nested sequence. So not onto our left and our right eye separately, we're just going to put it onto this nested sequence. And that starts off an analyzing phase, and you can see the progress of that over here. And that's got another minute or so to go. And this is sped up a little bit just for your convenience. Okay, so that's followed by actually doing the stabilizing. And that's now complete, but we are given a warning. You can see it's got a really small frame here. And it says, to avoid extreme cropping, set framing to stabilize only or adjust other parameters. Now, I don't just want to do stabilize only because that would introduce all sorts of black frames around the video. So we're going to go with the option of adjusting other parameters. And I'm going to adjust one parameter in particular. It's the smoothness parameter here. We're going to set this to what you might think is a bit of a surprising value. It's 50% right now, which basically means it considers 50% of the video for its stabilization. And in my mind, that's way too much. We just need to look a few frames ahead in order to get those sharp, jagged edges out of the movement. So I'm going to change this right down to 1%. Okay. We only want to consider, like I said, just a very short time frame in front of us. And that should smooth the video still quite considerably. So 0 would obviously take all of the stabilization out of the video, but 1%, you'll see, will do a fairly good job. So let's watch that video again, and you'll see it looks a lot smoother, even just with 1%. Okay. So that's one thing that we've done, and like I said, we've applied that to our nested sequence, so it applies to both the left and the right eye equally, and is applied the same way. So we don't have the left eye stabilization move differently to the right eye, because that would cause all sorts of stereoscopic issues. Okay, the next thing we want to do is change the frame rate. And the reason that I'm doing that second is because it's a bit of an exception. You could go in here and change the sequence here to 60 frames a second. And you could also then go in here to your nested sequence and change the time interpolation to optical flow, right? Now, let me just explain what that does. If we just do frame sampling and we change our video to 60 frames per second, it doesn't really change anything because it would just repeat frames to make the higher frames per second rate. So we actually need to reconstruct some frames in between. And to do that, we use an algorithm. And I found the nicest and smoothest algorithm is the optical flow. It seems to reconstruct the frames in between quite well. But I would not do that at this level. I would actually do that when we export the video. You've got the same settings here, right? So when we export the video, you'll see that we can change the frame rate. We just need to untick that. And we can set that to 60. And you can set, again, your time interpolation to optical flow here. And that way it applies it to everything holistically on the video. Now, I've noticed that the optical flow algorithm is treated somewhat differently depending on where you apply that. And I found that the best level to apply it at is at the export level when you change your frame rate. Okay, some of the other things that you can do, like I said, this is general editing, so you should be able to apply pretty much anything that you want to your nested sequence. If you wanted to, you could apply some text. And you say, don't look down. All right. Or you could maybe change the colors. If you change the colors, just remember to take away your anaglyph colors first so that you actually see what the color change will actually be, because you won't be looking at this necessarily as an anaglyph later. And you could also apply, say, video transitions. So let's have a look at, applying, if you had different, videos in here that you are concatenating together, you can, for example, do a page turn or flip, and you could apply that in between your two videos. Now, the one thing to remember is that when you do any of those things like text or page flips, that they will be 2D, they won't be 3D, right? So the text will appear at the level of the screen. It won't be behind the screen or in front of the screen. If you want to do anything fancy like that, you'd have to go back to your left and right eye video and tweak with that. And lastly, what I want to do is, actually we'll want to remove that text altogether. I see it's still there. I'll do another Control Z, and there it is, it's gone, okay. And let's lastly just add some music to this, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'll mute the actual sound that was recorded on the day, and it should now be a little bit more interesting. Anyway, next we're going to export this and combine it as a side-by-side video. Okay, we're now finally at the stage where we can export this video. And to do that, we're going to have to undo some things that we've done at the beginning that we don't want. So to do that, let's go into our nested sequence, and we'll go to the right-hand side, and we'll turn off the anaglyph colors that we've added to this. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. We'll turn that off as well. Now that looks rather bright. That's because we've also still got our blend mode on. That doesn't matter too much because we're going to turn one half of the video, or one side of the video, off as well. So right now we're just going to look at our right video. We're going to export the right one first. Now when we export it, we don't want to export inside our nested sequence. We want to export outside of that. From our base sequence, because then all the things that we've applied to the nested sequence apply as well. But because we've switched off the left-hand video, it will now only export the right-hand one. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to go File, Export Media. And remember, we want to change the frame rate to 60. And we also want to change the time interpolation to optical flow. Only do this if you want to change the frame rate. And then let's export it. Okay. So this will create our right-hand side. We're going to have to repeat this again for the left-hand side in a moment when this completes. Okay. So this is now done. We're going to have to do the same thing for our other eye. So we go back into our nested sequence, and this time we turn on our left eye, and we turn off our right eye. Go back into our base sequence where we have the nested sequence, and we do the same thing again. We'll go to Export, Media. It remembered that we did 60 frames a second for the last one, so it reuses that, and it remembers that we've done optical flow, so it remembers that as well. And we'll export that. Okay, so it's exported that as well. Now let's just have a look at the files that we've created. And you can see there's the first one, there's the second one. Let's just give them better names. So I'm going to call that right, because right was the first one that we exported. I'll call that one left. And those are the two that we are going to want to combine as our SBS output. And to do that, we're going to use a ffmpeg command, similar to the way that we split things before. We're now going to use it to combine things. And for that, we go to our video again, to the commentary in the video, and you will see I've got a section here called export processing. So ensure that you take the command from the export this time, not from the import as before. And this is the command that you're going to want to run for that. One thing to note here is that if you want the video to be full-sized, side by side, you do not need to specify the aspect ratio. If you do want it to be half width, then you will need to specify that so that it shrinks the video in the horizontal direction so that it is half width. Okay, the other thing to note is that you will need to have file names that are called left and right to start off with. If you don't, you'll just have to rename those file names in here, and it will create a video called sbs.mp4. Now, before we use this command, let's just go through what these different parts in the command mean, just as we had before with the input processing. So the first part here, this one is not a batch command, so you have to run this for each conversion that you want to do. You run ffmpeg. The input files are the left and the right MP4 files. So 2 files in order to create 1. Then we use this filter complex command to combine the 2 videos together. And let's just dive into that one a little bit more. So it takes the video from the first stream, which is the left, concatenates that with the right, and it basically does an hstack command on there, which combines the 2 together. It combines 2 of them, and then that creates an output label. And we'll then use that output label later. Then you specify the aspect ratio. As I said, you only need to specify that if you want the side-by-side video to be half width. Then you specify the codec here, and then we specify some metadata into that codec. And the reason I do that is because I want to have this video, the side-by-side video that we're creating, ready to be imported into YouTube. And this makes it ready for YouTube. It doesn't harm that it's there for other purposes, but if you ever wanted to import that side-by-side video into YouTube, you can do that because it's already got the frame packing equals 3, which makes YouTube recognize that this is a 3D video. Okay, then we map the output label that we've created up here. And we also map the audio, and then we create our side-by-side output file. Let's just copy that. So we'll just copy that entire command, and we'll now use ffmpeg to combine those 2. So again, I'm going to go in here, enter the command prompt, paste that command in here, but I'm going to call it side-by-side out. The reason I'm going to do that is because we've already got a file in there called sbs.mp4, and we don't want to override our input file. And then we run that command, and away it goes. Okay, so it's completed that. Let's go back to our file, and you can see that it's created that video right here. And let's just open that up to see that that has worked. I think this is looking good.
Bye.